In Home and Society, we believe that talking, discussing, and exploring ideas together is essential to the design process. Our goal is to create a platform with a new vision of micro and macro trends within this industry, generating added value for the design lover community. Design Talks includes then interviews with leading architects, interior designers, and showrooms to discover and discuss about what's trending and the whole creative process behind any project. I am Susana Ramos, and I'm honored to introduce our guest of Home Society Design Talks, Isabelle Miaja of Miaja Design Group, one of the most distinguished names in Singapore design scene. Hello, Isabelle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I look forward having this discussion with you on the design subject. Definitely.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on Design Talks, Isabelle. Starting with this interview, recently you were recognized by Tatler Singapore as a leading force in interior design business for International Women's Day. Could you please tell us about what made you follow this career path and how was it to become such a house name in designing business?
Lots of work, and then again, I would say lots of work. I think that when I started my career as an interior designer, definitely it was a learning curve. You have to put a lot of time, which a lot of people don't realize that actually it's a lot of like time to learn your passion. Passion is one thing, but there's a lot of technicalities in our business which needs to be addressed. And I was just like writing also another article on that. And I also think that, it's never emphasized enough on how many hours an architect and interior designer spends on their trade, on being, the good at what they're doing, and it's a lot of like knowledge that needs to be accumulated. And we're not talking about just like beautiful colors and textures, and I'm sure a lot of people can do that on their own, but when you're starting a project from scratch, there's a lot of like things about construction that actually needs to be learned about. So to become good at what you're doing, you have to spend a lot of hours. I don't know how many thousands of hours needs to be spent to be good at something, but I remember reading it about being a beautiful pianist. And I think that for every single trade, you have to spend many hours, which I think, unfortunately, being great at something comes with age, and you have to pay your dues.
Yes, I totally agree. When we look at the final result of a project, either on a magazine or, even in real life, we never think about all the small details, all the knowledge that is indeed involved in achieving that perfect result, and all the try-ons, all the trying process, because. When we think about designing in a computer, it's the result in the place can be totally different. So there's a lot of trying involved.
The trial errors, a lot of errors. I think that you learn. I read somewhere that you have to learn from your mistakes. One never learns as much from doing things perfect. And you have to really try and fall until you really like feel that you've got something you can count on, like, in the back of your mind, your knowledge is there, and it becomes an instinct knowledge also. So things don't repeat exactly the same, but there are patterns also in everything. And when you design, there are a pattern on what's going to make it something beautiful and successful. And there are patterns that tells you you're going to get into trouble if you continue that way. And this is something that, not only your sixth sense tells you, but also years of like going through the paths, many paths and many worn out paths, that at one point you can tell, okay, this is not going the right way and this is going the right way. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And from Paris to the United States to Asia, you have lived and been in more continents than the average person. How would you say this panoply of countries and cultures has influenced your uh, design process and your creations?
I think that the design process, in my way of thinking, is pretty much there's a process to it, and it doesn't that it's not very different if I work in different countries. It's most about knowledge, also about the place where you're working and the people you're working for. There's so much differences between the different cultures, and what works for one is actually not necessarily good for the other. There's a lot of cultural differences also in people's approach to their environment. And so I think that is always in a constant rethink and reapproach in terms of the way I work. I'm just starting for the first time to work in Korea. Even though the culture dips deeply into some Chinese and some Japanese influence, I think Korea also has a very strong history of of the country, and to me, that knowledge needs to be acquired. So I do have knowledge, but I always feel that there's more to be learned because the projects demand for me to get like new knowledge. So it becomes an integral part of the place where we're designing.
And do you believe are there any big or fundamental differences between designing and the styles from Europe, America, and Asia, and more specifically Singapore?
Designing, like everything in the world, I think people are different. Therefore, you have to learn those differences. There's also you learn in business that some people you shake the hand, some people you just like tilt your head. Some people you have to give them a big hug. If not, they feel that actually you're too cold. They don't want to work with you. And I think it goes through the whole system of understanding the cultures. Again, I come back to that, but it is something that most people don't. Working from far, you have to even put more effort into designing in a place which you have not even set foot in. I think I was in Korea maybe once in my life, and then at the moment I'm designing a project in Busan, a whole hotel, which wants to dig deeply into their historical roots, and asking me also to design a landscape which is a typical Korean landscape, and this is definitely a huge learning curve for me. And I think that as a designer, not only you need to stay current, but you also need to keep on learning.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And besides this influence of cultures, are there any common elements that you try to incorporate into your work, or is everything like blank canvas when you first start?
I think that incorporating what I've learned comes just almost naturally, but those are fundamentals of how you like approach a space for how to live in the space and how to use the space. So those are things that are more as I mentioned, the fundamentals. You know that how to create a path, even for handicaps, and how to make things accessible, which reminds me that I have to do a handicap toilet in that. Yeah, I forgot about that. You see, it's like no matter what, and now, no matter how many years, there's things that actually, shush, I forgot about this one. So there's the common knowledge on how you approach a project. It's a bit systematic, but then after that comes in all that special strokes that make that project quite unique. I mean, you do want to do something which is a unique painting, and you're not going to repeat it. You're not going to. So everything that you add to the basic elements need to become the soul of the project, and that is what makes each project stand out on their own. I think at one point you don't want to be entering an Isabelle Miaja design project. You want to enter that specific space and later on think, wow, who designed that?
Yeah.
But first the space has to grab you. And so it's not, for me to, sign it all over. What you want is that project to breathe its own life and then shine on its own and mature on its own. And so you have to give them like a child, you have to give them all those elements, and at one point it just starts like living and breathing its own life.
I totally agree. You have always been surrounded with artistic familiar figures your entire life, with your grandfather being a bronze sculptor and your grand-uncle being the national poet of Spain. The world of art seems to have always been part of your life. Would you say that this has affected you and your art in any way?
I think that being sensitive and having been given that sensitivity was a great aspect of my childhood. My mom was always fascinated by different culture. I know that she's so much into Egyptian history and she loves astronomy. And we were just the other day talking about that new telescope that's being launched in November, which you will be able to see beyond our galaxy, which is going to be amazing. And so when you're able to have discussions like this at home, I think that your mind really starts having an understanding of boundaries that are much farther away than your own home living, and being surrounded by books and by art and by and also the culture of beauty was something that was a great gift given to me right from the start. But I also think that it's not given to everyone, and that culture of beauty might not be something that you are brought up at home with.
Yeah.
So I would always encourage people that beauty can be found everywhere. Nature is one of the first teachers for me. I think that I learned some unbelievable lessons and still keep on learning about them. Walking in nature, you look at the wings of a butterfly, and then you think, wow, I mean, nature and universe and God has actually made beautiful things where the colors come together in a fascinating array of colorways, and I think you can learn a lot by that. So you can also educate yourself, and taste can be integral to your upbringing, but you can also develop it yourself. But I would think you need to give that hope that people who have not had the chance to grow up in amazing environments still can, develop a mind that will be astonishing with their understanding of what they can absorb. I mean, knowledge is something you need to acquire and put effort into.
Yes, and that expression you use, the culture of beauty, it's I believe that's it, because, for instance, at school, kids are taught how to think in a way of mathematics, sciences, but that part of artistic education or learn how to appreciate and cultivate beauty is not really. explored, I believe.
I remember that your art classes were once a week,
Yeah.
and mathematics classes used to be like once a day. And
Yes.
how I wish it was the other way around, because I was so terrible at mathematics. Um, and I think that yes, fortunately now some schools are giving a lot of priority for people who are very creative, and I think that there's a feeling that creativity with parents now being much more hands-on into the direction of their children's abilities. They can maybe spot it a little bit faster than we had the chance. So I think that yes, you have to be attentive to the. But I think that there's beauty in numbers when
Yes.
you right, and when you think of like the golden number, which regulates everything that we design and that we live by, it's all mathematics.
Yeah.
So I think that in a way, even mathematicians are creative, right?
Yes.
So it's just a different side. They just work with numbers and all that. But when you think of that shape, then that shape you find it everywhere. And that's we even use it because remember that they say that there's we recognize beauty in how people's face is symmetric.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a natural attraction towards symmetry.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
and that's already in us. It's an amazing discovery to know that everything that we feel is intuitive, is part of some kind of a gene we have inside that like brings us towards beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Totally agree. Your designs, even if minimal, always seem to have some color present. You just refer the colors, for instance, on the butterfly wings. Do you
Yes.
have any preference on whether you prefer to work with neutral tones or with a more colorful palette?
I would say that at the moment I'm more attracted to the cooler tonalities, but I also think that because I'm very close to nature, I think that it's a big learning field. It just depends on the project, depends on what type of mood you're trying to give the project. If you want something which is like fresh, joyful, then you use like more the warmer colors. If you want something a little bit more meditative, you go to the cooler colors. If you want something which is totally like zen and very which is not nature, to be honest. I mean, nature has not made our world in black and white only for
Mm-hmm.
like animals actually. Animals see only black and white, which is hard to perceive.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at my dog and I'm thinking I'm so sad that she's missing out on so many beautiful colors, and we are so fortunate. So why would we want to live in a world which is only black and white? Why
Yes.
would we want to live in a like beige on beige tone when nature has given us, the semi-precious stones which we crushed, and we did so many beautiful paintings in the Renaissance with
Mm-hmm.
those colors. Um, I've never seen a painting in the past which actually was done with only black and
Yeah. Not neutrals allowed.
white.
Um,
So I think that every project has its own mood and requires a different palette of colors. And I think it's important also to be sensitive to that.
mhm. Now talking a little bit more about the Miaja Design Group, it is known for ranging from luxury brand hotels and resorts to high-end residential lots. Would you say there is a favorite type of design project you enjoy to conduct?
Would I say that the project that I love the most is the one that lets me imagine and just come up with a world which I don't have any boundaries. The dream of any designer. I think at this point, although they do have constraints with structural and a lot of things, architects sometimes I find that they have the chance to create now buildings like Zaha Hadid has been doing, and other architects, where the imagination is, the sky is the limit and beyond even more the limit. They do have constraints, but they are pushing those limits, further and further. And I sometimes look at what they are able to do with a lot of envy, because they're able to shake, shake the approach of building construction. So as an interior designer, I think that we still are bound by walls, and we're bound also by the utilitarian aspect. So I'm not saying that we cannot be innovative, but we also, I think that you need to be respectful that a space is also a space where people will want to live. And there's a sense of comfort that I love to respect for people. I don't like when people look at a chair and don't even know how to sit on it. I like a comfortable sofa, and I like a beautiful light, but it needs to give me light at the end of the day. So
yeah, of course.
yeah, so functionality is always there's always that big fight between form and function, and I like to always think of the function within my forms. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, totally.
But I also think that, one of my dreams will be to start designing objects, and I think that from macro to micro, I think that that's the amazing possibility in the design world, that you're not constrained, because once you enter the world of design, you can design from a simple pen, a beautiful environment. And at this point, it's the first time I'm given to design a restaurant with the whole swimming pool, with the whole landscaping. And landscaping, of course, you have the idea of what you want, but this time I'm going to have to delve into the greenery world, the world of green and the world of trees. And I'm glad that now I have a new research to make, and yeah, a new world that has opened to me one time, which is very, very grateful for that. So it's a world in expansion, like our universe.
Yeah, design, I believe, has no limits. Once you start, you can
go on. Yeah.
From interior design to product design, and even do products that totally fit your design style.
Yes.
And can be bespoke options.
Yes.
And 2020 has been a difficult year for nearly the entire world, yet you have managed to overcome any setbacks and even received 2 World Luxury Awards for your work in the Pullman Maldives, Mahmuda Resorts, and for the vegan cuisine restaurant Path Chameleon. Which 3 words would you use to describe your design style?
I think that I like to always give something unique, with a touch of an inspired touch. I like the design to go beyond just being a design. I like to give a sense of inspiration, and something beyond just things, like a mental calmness when you enter the space. I like to give soul to a design, and then not to forget not to be too serious.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that being too serious in something, adds a bit of gloom. I like to smile. I like things to smile, and so I like inventiveness with a bit of a bit of cheekiness, airiness in it.
Mm-hmm. And I believe it totally shows in your designs that happier approach to life for seeing the bright side and the beauty, as you referred.
Yes.
What other projects are you currently working on that you hope to be highlighted in the near future?
I think that we're doing the renovation of a project in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
a Movenpick. I think it's going to be quite interesting because I love renovations. Like almost sometimes, like an animal changing skin. It's still the animal is there, but it's transforming. And then yes, hopefully I give it more of that. New colorful like aspect, something
Mm-hmm.
that gives it a new life, and it's sustainable. You can make an old lady look like a fresh young lady. Which is what we did for the Sofitel So here. It was a complete renovation, and I was very happy to see that taking an old building and giving it a new facelift. It's actually quite rewarding. And same in Busan. I think that the new project is also a renovation of a space, which they wanted to become, the place to be for people to come and relax and find new breathing space within the city. And I think that any space in the world can become an oasis, and it's up to us how we transform it. So like even a little nook in a room can become
Mm-hmm.
your oasis if it's well designed. So I think that those two projects are going to be quite interesting to work on as we continue in 2021. Well, we only have 6 months left, so I guess
Mm-hmm.
it's going to go into 2022. Then we're having also a lot of residential, and that aspect of our company, was not as strong before, but being now closer to home for such a long time, we are seeing more residential coming into the company to be designed and so this one is a different approach, because yesterday I was doing a Zoom project meeting where I was doing a presentation to a room full of people in suits, and it's a big project. But then here you end up meeting with the husband and the wife, and then you go into a world where it's much more intimate and much more emotional, which brings out in me a different aspect of my design capabilities. It's almost like you have to also give some. My cat is being very noisy. I don't know if you can hear
Sorry.
it. um, so if so it's about emotion. It brings out also much more intuitivity into someone's personality, and kind of like second guess them. They don't really always know what they want. Somewhere you have to invent and answer something for them that they don't even know that they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much more demanding, I would say, but also once they tell you that they're really happy with the space, I think it's also as rewarding as creating a full macro project.
Mm-hmm. And now talking a little bit more about products, are there any particular Home Society products that you feel could complement your visual style in any way?
I tell you, I personally love designing carpets.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's almost like designing a painting. I
Mm-hmm.
love. I think that, and I so admire the handcrafting that comes into designing carpet and the actual understanding of the yarn and the process of the coloring of the yarns and thinking that, you know, when you touch that carpet, hands have been actually hand tufting each and every uh, square millimeter of it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that human aspect of it. Of course, everything that is being made, is done by men, but so much machinery is coming into it that carpets still retain that beautiful man to material which is, still very ancient.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And just to conclude our interview, what is the best advice that you could give to any designer?
I would think keep the passion going. Only come into this business if the passion is strong, because it's going to be definitely a very trying path of a lot of two steps forward and five steps backwards in many aspects of it. Um, I think that it's very hard for people to realize unless they would be sitting next to you to see how many hours are being spent into just one single line drawing,
Mm-hmm.
because of the thought process and all the ideas that need to be put into it to make sure that it's actually not just a beautiful drawing, but a drawing that works as well. So passion and persistence. Don't give up. I think that once your vision is strong, keep it keep it out there always at all times, and remind yourself when the tough gets going. When the going gets tough, the tough
Yeah.
gets going.
Yeah.
And it's so true for everyone. I mean, in every work, I think that we all face difficulties. The work itself, working with people, finding, a, a same wavelength,
Mm-hmm.
and then going through storms with knowing that you have a goal for yourself. And it's not always about. I would think that recognition is a, an important thing, because sometimes we all need a pat in the back
Mm-hmm.
to let us know that, hey, you've done well.
Yes.
But I think being not running for that, I think let it come to you, because eventually, if you are good at what you're doing and you stay true to yourself, people will see through that and come
Mm-hmm.
to you and say, well done.
Yeah. Totally agree. So once again, Isabel, thank you so much for being part of Design Talks, for having accepted to be part of this interview project, and to have given us such amazing and insightful tips and a vision of your whole creative process and your inspirations. Thank you, and I'm sure it will really add value to the designer lover community.
Well, I hope so. I think that every step
Yeah.
towards your goal is a pebble that actually, you can put in front of you. So yeah,
Mhm.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you soon, I hope. Stay in
Yeah.
touch.